Hello and welcome to Economics Live from the School of Philosophy and Economic Science in London. We live in what is widely regarded, at least in the Western world, as a democratic age, although it's clear that its democratic credentials are being seriously challenged by current events. For example, a few weeks ago, this report appeared in the Times newspaper. I can show you. Half of Gen Z want Britain to be ruled by a dictator. And it adds that they thought that Britain would be a better place if a strong leader was in charge who did not have to bother with Parliament and elections. So why do we bother? Well, Gen Z incidentally means people who are now aged between 18 and 27 years. The future's in their hands. My name is Ian Mason, and I'm a tutor and student of practical philosophy and economics with justice in the school. And you may wonder why a broadcast on economics is bothering with this. But the answer is simple. Numerous studies have shown that successful government and institutions are an important factor in establishing and maintaining successful economies. It's been observed, for example, that there has never been a famine in a functioning democracy. And most famines are caused by poor governance, not by lack of food. Well, questions about government have exercised philosophers since ancient times. Plato, in his book, The Republic, described 5 main forms of government, which he called aristocracy, timocracy, oligarchy, democracy, and tyranny, the last of which is strong leadership, where might is right and the will of the ruler has the force of law. Much later in life, in a book called The Laws, he became much more pragmatic, writing, I'll show you, it would be right to say that there are, as it were, 2 mother forms of political systems from which all others arise. One is called monarchy, the other democracy. The extreme of the former is the Persian system, which was an absolute monarchy, while that of the latter is ours, and by that he meant the Athenian democracy. The others are practically all, as I said, variations of these 2. Now, a city must necessarily have a share in both of these if it is to have freedom and friendship accompanied by wisdom. This, then, is what our argument wishes to prescribe by saying that a city could never be properly governed in the absence of these 2. Well, all this was brought into focus in the modern era by a French philosopher called Charles Montesquieu, by the English lawyer Sir William Blackstone, and by the founding fathers of the American Constitution. Montesquieu, himself a judge, was influenced by his observation that the British constitutional settlement of 1688, when a new monarchy was established in place of an old dictatorial one claiming to rule by divine right. An essential part of the new settlement in Britain was a promise by the new king and queen that was incorporated in the coronation oath. They promised to govern the people of this kingdom of England and the dominions thereunto belonging, according to the statutes in Parliament agreed on and the laws and customs of the same. There was a similar provision for Scotland. This effectively formalised an old principle of the English common law, which said that the king ought not to be under man, but under God and the law, for the law makes the king. Thereafter, for all practical purposes, the law in question, at least in Britain, would be the laws passed by Parliament. King Charles III swore a similar oath. Well, Montesquieu was led by this to describe the ideal constitution in terms of what he called a separation of powers. He identified three distinct functions of government, namely making laws, which was the function of the legislature, administering the state, which was the function of the monarch or executive, and interpreting and enforcing the laws, which was the function of the judges. Blackstone, who completed his commentaries on the laws of England in 1769, described three species of government, each of which had strengths and weaknesses. He thought that in democracies, public spirit or goodness of intention was most likely to be found, but they often lacked the wisdom and united strength to carry laws into effect. Monarchies, he thought, did have the strength, but there was always the danger of improvidence or oppression. Aristocracies were more likely to have the wisdom of experience, but were likely to be less honest than democracies and weaker than monarchies. And what he also described was how these three species of government were combined together at the heart of the British Constitution as the King in Parliament, which is the legislative branch of government. In modern terms, the executive branch of government consists of the King, the Prime Minister, and the Cabinet. The King has very few powers that he can exercise on his own, and the Prime Minister and Cabinet, believe it or not, have no powers of their own, but exercise the monarch's power according to the dictates and powers conferred by Parliament for so long as Parliament allows them to. But the Parliament itself has three parts. Obviously, the democratic element is the wholly elected House of Commons. The supposedly aristocratic part, which is probably more of an oligarchy, is the House of Lords, which today does include people of experience in politics, government, diplomacy, and business. And the King has the residual role of introducing the executive's annual agenda in the King's speech at the opening of Parliament and of signing the laws passed by both the Commons and the Lords into effect by a procedure known as the royal assent. These three aspects, with numerous variations, appear in most modern constitutions, including the American Constitution, as a House of Representatives, a Senate or upper house, and a president, who is head of state and sometimes chief executive, with varying powers conferred either by the Constitution itself or by the, excuse me, or by the representative houses. What Blackstone saw was not so much a separation of powers as a unity of powers, making the best of the three main forms of government while mitigating the weaknesses and possible abuses of each of them. It has been described as a system of checks and balances, which probably is not perfect, but which does at least have the potential to deliver societies of free and law-abiding people enjoying a fair measure of communal and individual prosperity. It may not be perfect, but it has often worked quite well. And that's why we bother with democracy. It is to maintain the principle of freedom under law and protect people from the excesses of concentrated power. Because, as has long been observed, the tendency of power is to corrupt, and of absolute power to corrupt absolutely. So thank you for listening. If you want to know more about the school and its work, go to www.schoolofphilosophy.org. Farewell for now, and have a good day.